Timo had always been drawn to old maps and forgotten stories. As a child, he would sit for hours in the small library of his town, running his fingers across faded pages that spoke of temples hidden in the jungles of Central America. Now, as a grown traveler, he carried those same stories in his heart. He had come to the forest not for treasure but for knowledge. The air around him was thick and heavy, filled with the calls of birds that echoed high above. Every step he took sank slightly into the damp ground. Tall trees stretched like pillars toward the sky, their roots winding like snakes across the forest floor. Timo carried only a small bag, a notebook, and a simple lamp for when the shadows grew long. He was careful not to disturb the plants or the ground too much. The local people had warned him that this land was sacred, and he respected their words. For days he searched, guided only by a fragment of a carving he had once seen in a museum. The carving showed a feathered serpent curling around a star. Many believed it was only a symbol of worship, but Timo thought it might be something more. He believed the old stories had layers of meaning and he wanted to uncover them. On the fourth day of his journey, Timo stumbled upon a broken wall half covered by vines. At first it looked like nothing more than a pile of stones, but as he brushed the leaves aside, he saw shapes cut into the stone. The marks were not just decoration. They were glyphs, the writing of the Mayans. He leaned close, tracing the lines with his hand. They were worn, but still clear enough to read. One figure showed a serpent with feathers spread wide. Another showed what looked like a great bird in the sky. Though the wings were shaped too evenly, too sharp, it looked less like a bird and more like a vessel. Timo paused, his heart quickening. Could the old people have seen something from the sky and carved it into stone? The thought filled him with wonder. He took out his notebook and began sketching quickly. He wanted to capture every line, every symbol. As he worked, he noticed something strange. The wall curved downward into the earth. The carving seemed to lead his eyes toward the ground. He brushed more leaves away and found the edge of a stairway, almost hidden. Excitement filled him, but so did caution. He remembered the warnings of the villagers who told him not to enter the tombs. They said the feathered serpent was a god of both earth and sky, and to disturb his resting place would bring misfortune. Timo did not take their words lightly, yet curiosity burned stronger in him than fear. He told himself he would not take anything. He would only look, only learn. He stood at the top of the steps and lifted his lamp. The light shone against walls damp with age. The steps disappeared into shadow, leading deeper than he could see. He hesitated for a long moment, listening to the forest. The calls of birds had grown quiet and only the rustle of leaves answered him. Finally, he placed his foot on the first step. The air grew cooler as he descended. The stone walls pressed close on either side, carved with more figures. Some showed the serpent again, but others showed patterns of stars. There were circles and dots arranged in ways that looked like maps of the heavens. Timo recognized some shapes. He had studied constellations, and here they were carved in a tomb thousands of years old. He whispered to himself in amazement. Could the Mayans have known the stars this clearly, or had someone shown them? These thoughts filled his mind as he reached the bottom of the stairway. The passage opened into a chamber. His lamp revealed a ceiling high above, painted with bright colors that had not faded despite the passing centuries. The image showed a serpent coiled around the sun, its feathers shining in gold paint. Across the walls were panels made of stone and something else. At first, Timo thought it was more paint, but when he touched it gently, he realized it was gold pressed into the stone. The gold did not shine like normal. It glowed softly, as if holding light within. Timo stepped back in awe. This was not just decoration. It felt like a message left behind, waiting to be seen. He took a slow breath. This was the hidden tomb of the feathered serpent. He could feel it in his heart. The carvings, the paintings, the golden panels, all pointed to a story far older and deeper than he had imagined. The stories he had read as a child were not just myths. They were pieces of a greater truth. As he stood there, the lamp flickered and shadows danced across the chamber walls. For a moment it seemed the serpent itself was moving, alive within the stone. Timo felt a shiver, but also a strange peace. He whispered softly, promising he had come only to listen and to learn. He opened his notebook again, sketching what he saw, capturing every detail. He wanted to take nothing but drawings and memories, yet in the back of his mind a question grew stronger. Why had the serpent been carved with stars? Why did the golden panels shine as if they carried light from another place? Timo did not yet know, but he sensed that this tomb was more than a resting place. It was a key, and he was only at the beginning of understanding it. Timo returned to the chamber the next morning with the same mix of wonder and caution. He had spent the night resting under the trees near the entrance, listening to the forest sounds. Even in sleep, the images of the golden panels and the painted serpent had stayed in his mind. The more he thought about them, the more he believed that this discovery was unlike anything he had ever seen. He held his lamp higher as he walked back into the tomb. The light revealed the golden surfaces once more. They glowed as if the metal itself remembered sunlight. Timo leaned closer, studying the designs pressed into the panels. At first glance, they looked like ordinary decorations, but when his eyes adjusted, he noticed patterns hidden in the lines. The glyphs told stories in the Mayan way, but beside them were strange symbols that did not match any writing he knew. They curved like waves and spiraled like galaxies. Some of the lines connected into shapes that looked like tools or vessels, not animals or plants. Timo had seen many carvings in his studies, yet these felt different, as if they did not belong to this time or this world. He placed his hand gently on the surface of one panel. It felt cool, smoother than stone, almost as if it had been shaped with care beyond human skill. For a moment he thought he heard a faint hum, but it might have only been his own heartbeat echoing in the chamber. The local guides who had helped him reach the area had refused to follow him into the tomb. They stood outside when he first entered, their voices firm and calm. They said the tomb belonged to the feathered serpent and was not meant for outsiders. Timo had tried to explain that he sought only knowledge, but they shook their heads. He respected their choice. He knew the land was sacred to them, and he would never force them. Still, he felt drawn by something greater than fear or hesitation. Now alone in the chamber, he studied the panels more carefully. Each golden piece seemed to tell part of a longer story. The first showed people looking up at the sky. The second showed a serpent flying above, feathers stretching like rays of light. The third showed what looked like a long shape crossing the heavens. Timo paused. The shape did not look like an animal at all. It was too balanced, too even. He thought again of ships not on water but in the air. He opened his notebook and copied the figures one by one. His sketches filled the page, but his mind filled even faster with questions. How had the Mayans seen such things? Could they have imagined them on their own? Or had someone shown them long ago? As he worked, the glow of the panels seemed to brighten slightly. The soft light reflected in his eyes as he studied the strange spiral symbols. They reminded him of the charts he had once seen in an observatory, maps of the stars. He wondered if the symbols could be a code, a way to show paths across the night sky. Timo sat on the smooth floor of the chamber and looked up at the painted ceiling. The serpent was wrapped around the sun, but scattered around it were tiny golden dots. They were not placed at random. They formed patterns, some of which he recognized as constellations. Others seemed unfamiliar, as if they showed skies from another place. The thought made his chest tighten with excitement. Could the tomb be more than a resting place? Could it be a record of a meeting between the Mayans and visitors from the sky? The idea seemed too large, yet the carvings and the glowing gold gave weight to the thought. Timo pulled out a small compass he always carried. He wanted to see if the dots on the ceiling matched the directions of stars above the jungle. To his surprise, some of the golden points aligned perfectly with real constellations he knew. Others pointed beyond what he could name. He wondered if they showed stars too faint for the human eye, or perhaps places not seen from Earth at all. He whispered softly, almost as if speaking to the chamber itself. If the serpent was truly a visitor from the sky, then this tomb was a message. But why had it been left here? Why had the gold been shaped to shine in the dark as if waiting for someone to return? The air in the chamber felt still, yet charged with quiet energy. Timo set down his notebook and rested his hand again on the golden panel. This time he was sure of it. A vibration ran faintly under his palm, as if the metal carried a memory. It was not only decoration, it was something more. He leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment. His thoughts raced faster than he could keep up with. He imagined ancient people standing in this same chamber, looking at the same golden glow. What had they understood? What had they believed? Timo opened his eyes and promised himself he would be careful. He would not rush. The tomb was not a place to claim, but a place to learn. He had no interest in riches. What he wanted was truth. The gold was not for wealth. It was a key to knowledge. Outside, the forest continued to sing, unaware of the wonder hidden beneath its roots. Inside, Timo sat in the glow of the golden panels, his notebook filled with drawings, his heart filled with questions. He knew he had stepped into something far greater than himself. The carvings told of the serpent, but also of something yet to be understood. And deep within the tomb, the gold continued to shine like stars, waiting for the day when its story would be fully revealed. Timo woke early the next day, the sound of the forest filling his ears. He felt the call of the tomb pulling him back inside. The golden panels, the painted ceiling, the hidden symbols, each detail had stayed alive in his thoughts through the night. He carried his lamp and notebook again, ready to search for more answers. As he stepped carefully down the stone stairs, he noticed how the air cooled the deeper he went. The walls around him seemed to whisper with the stories carved into them. Some figures showed people raising their arms to the sky. Others showed the serpent moving among the stars. Each carving felt like a piece of a larger puzzle. When he reached the chamber, the golden panel still glowed softly. Timo placed his lamp on the ground and sat before the walls. He studied the strange spiral symbols more carefully this time. They seemed to follow a path, almost like a map. He traced the lines with his finger, trying to see where they led. One panel caught his attention. It showed the serpent descending from the sky, feathers spread wide. Beneath it were Mayan glyphs that he had seen before in books, but some of the words seemed arranged in an unusual way. He pulled out his notebook and began to translate slowly. He was not a master of the language, but he understood enough to see the meaning. The glyphs spoke of a traveler who came from beyond the sun. The traveler carried light and knowledge, teaching the people how to watch the stars and count the days. But the message did not end there. It also spoke of a gift left behind, something to be found when humans were ready to walk among the stars themselves. Timo read the lines again and again, his heart beating faster each time. A gift left behind, a message for the future. Could the tomb hold something more than carvings and gold? Could it hold a secret meant for all of humanity? He lifted his eyes to the ceiling. The golden dots around the serpent seemed brighter today, though he could not explain why. They almost looked alive, as if they were responding to his presence. The idea made him shiver, but also filled him with wonder. He turned back to the panels. One section showed people standing before the serpent, hands outstretched. Above them was a circle filled with lines that looked like rays of light. He thought of the stories he had read as a boy, tales of gods giving fire to humans. But here the fire was not flame. It was light from the stars. The chamber grew strangely quiet. The forest sounds that usually drifted down from above were gone. Even his own breath felt loud in the stillness. Timo held the lamp closer to the panel, and as he did, something unexpected happened. The golden surface shimmered, not like simple reflection, but like water disturbed by a pebble. His eyes widened. The panel seemed to come alive. Faint shapes appeared within the gold, forming a moving image. He saw the serpent once more, but this time it glided through the stars, its feathers glowing brighter than suns. Then the image shifted, showing the serpent lowering a sphere of light into the hands of people on the ground. Timo stared, hardly believing what he was seeing. The message was not only carved into stone, it was recorded within the gold itself, waiting for the right moment to reveal its story. The people in the image lifted the light high, and above them appeared paths of stars stretching outward. The image faded slowly, leaving only the glowing panel once more. Timo sat in silence, his notebook forgotten in his lap. He had just witnessed something that could not be explained by simple tools of the past. This was knowledge left behind in a way far beyond what he had ever imagined. He whispered softly, almost afraid to break the stillness. The serpent was not only a god of myth, it was a traveler from the sky, leaving behind a promise for humanity. The gift of light spoken of in the glyphs was real, and it was meant to guide humans when they were ready to explore beyond Earth. Timo felt both small and proud at the same time. Small because he stood before a story that stretched across ages and worlds. Proud because he was human, part of the people the serpent had trusted with this message. He realized this tomb was not built to keep secrets hidden forever. It was built to wait until someone could understand. He picked up his notebook again, his hands trembling slightly. He began to draw the images he had seen, knowing they were too important to forget. Every line mattered, every detail carried meaning. As he worked, he thought of the future. If the serpent had left a gift, then one day humanity would find it and carry it forward. The glow of the panels dimmed to their normal light, but Timo felt different now. The chamber no longer seemed only like a tomb. It felt like a voice speaking across time, a voice of the serpent waiting for someone to listen. Timo placed his hand gently on the panel and spoke softly, as if the chamber could hear. He promised he would share the story not for treasure but for truth. For the first time he felt he understood why he had been drawn here. The serpent had left a message and he had been chosen to see it. And as he left the chamber to breathe the fresh air of the jungle once more, the golden walls behind him glowed faintly, as though they approved of his promise. Timo could not stay away from the tomb for long. Each morning when the sunlight reached through the tall trees, he felt drawn back to the golden chamber. The message of the serpent, the glowing images, the promise of a gift for humanity. They filled his mind with questions that would not rest. He stepped carefully down the stone stairs once more, lamp in hand. The cool air wrapped around him as he entered the chamber. The golden panels waited in their quiet glow, as though they had been expecting him. Timo placed his lamp on the ground and walked slowly across the room, studying every surface. His eyes fell on the center of the floor. It was smooth stone, but there was a round mark faintly visible. He knelt down and brushed away dust with his hand. The circle seemed too perfect to be natural. Around it were tiny carvings shaped like feathers, each pointing inward. Timo leaned closer, pressing his hand to the center. To his surprise, the stone moved slightly as if it were a hidden panel. He pushed more firmly and a soft sound filled the chamber. The circle sank into the floor and lines of light spread outward like rivers of gold. The golden panels on the walls grew brighter, their glow dancing across the chamber. Timo stepped back, both startled and amazed. The tomb was waking. The ceiling above him shimmered as golden dots rearranged themselves, forming a vast map of the night sky. Stars twinkled across the surface, some familiar, others strange. The serpent painted on the ceiling seemed to move among them, guiding his eyes toward a cluster marked with special care. He pulled out his notebook quickly, sketching the patterns. The map was too detailed to be only decoration. It showed paths among the stars, lines connecting suns like roads across the heavens. Timo's heart raced as he realized what he was seeing. This was not only a tomb, it was a guide, a chart left for those who would one day travel beyond Earth. The chamber filled with a gentle hum, a sound that seemed alive yet calm. Timo felt it in his chest as much as he heard it. The lines of light on the floor shifted, forming shapes that pointed toward the golden panels. One of them shone brighter than the rest. He approached it slowly. The panel displayed a new image. This time it was not the serpent alone. It showed people standing beneath a bright sky. Above them, a vessel shaped like a shining feather descended, its surface glowing with the same light as the panels. The vessel did not look like anything Timo had ever seen, yet it carried a design both graceful and purposeful. The image changed again. Now it showed the vessel leaving the people, rising back into the stars while those on the ground lifted their hands in farewell. Beside them was a symbol that looked like an open circle, with lines stretching outward in many directions. Timo studied it carefully, his mind working to make sense of the symbol. It looked like more than art. It could be a code or a marker, something meant to be recognized when the time was right. The chamber dimmed for a moment, then another pattern appeared on the floor. The glowing lines formed an image of Earth, simple but clear, surrounded by dots that represented the moon and nearby planets. Slowly the image shifted, showing a path moving outward into the stars. At the end of the path was the same symbol he had seen near the vessel. Timo whispered under his breath. It was a destination. The serpent had left a map not only of the skies above Earth, but also of a place far away, waiting to be found. The gift mentioned in the glyphs was real, and its location was marked for the future. He felt a deep respect as he stood in the glowing chamber. The people of long ago had carried this knowledge with care, carving it into gold and stone, hiding it until the right time. They had trusted the future to discover it. Timo touched the floor once more, and the light slowly faded back into the circle at the center. The golden panels dimmed to their softer glow. The chamber returned to its quiet state, as though it had shared only a glimpse of its secret. He sat on the smooth floor, notebook resting on his knees. His hands moved quickly, drawing the maps, the symbols, the vessel shaped like a feather. Each detail felt important, as if it was part of a great story waiting to be told. He knew he must carry these drawings with care, for they were not only for him but for all who would one day seek the stars. The forest sounds returned faintly as the chamber grew silent. Timo lifted his lamp and stood, his heart full of wonder. He had awakened the tomb, if only for a moment, and it had shown him a vision of humanity's future. He walked slowly back toward the stairs, pausing once to look at the serpent painted above. Its golden feathers seemed to shine more brightly now, as though it approved of his discovery. Timo whispered softly, promising he would keep searching, keep learning. When he stepped into the daylight once more, the jungle seemed brighter, the air fresher. He carried not only his notebook but also the weight of a secret older than history. The tomb had spoken and he had listened. The sun was just beginning to rise when Timo returned once more to the hidden tomb. Each visit left him with more questions than answers. He could not keep himself away, for the chamber seemed alive with meaning, waiting for him to listen. He carried his notebook filled with sketches of the star maps, the glowing serpent, and the vessel shaped like a feather. Every line he had drawn reminded him that he was part of something far greater than himself. The stone steps welcomed him again with cool silence. His lamp lit the way as he moved carefully downward. When he reached the golden chamber, the glow of the panels greeted him like old friends. For a moment he simply stood still, breathing in the air of the place. The tomb no longer felt like only stone and gold. It felt like a bridge between past and future. Timo placed his lamp on the ground and walked slowly to the center. He touched the circle on the floor, the same hidden mechanism he had pressed the day before. Once again the chamber stirred. Lines of light spread outward, the golden panels brightened, and the ceiling filled with stars. The serpent coiled among them, feathers shining like rays of sunlight, but this time something new happened. The light in the chamber grew stronger than before, wrapping the room in a soft golden glow. The serpent on the ceiling seemed to shimmer, and before Timo's eyes a figure began to form in the air. It started as a haze of light, then took the shape of a great serpent with wide feathers stretching outward. The figure was not solid, but it was clear enough to see. It glided gently above the floor, its body curling with grace, its feathers shimmering like streams of gold. Timo froze, his eyes wide. He knew it was not a living creature, yet it felt alive in its presence. It was an image, a memory left behind, perhaps a recording made long ago. But the way it filled the chamber gave it more than the weight of memory. It carried purpose, as if it had been waiting for someone to awaken it. The serpent's head lowered slightly toward Timo. Its glowing eyes met his, calm and steady. Then a voice filled the chamber, not in sound but in thought. Timo felt the words inside him rather than hearing them with his ears. The voice spoke of journeys across the skies, of sharing knowledge with the people of Earth long ago. It told how the serpent had taught them to read the stars, to measure time and to understand the cycles of the heavens. The Mayans had listened with open hearts, recording what they learned in stone and gold. The voice then spoke of a future time, when humans would be ready to leave their homeworld and travel outward. The serpent's image showed people building vessels that rose into the sky, their hands lifted in hope. Above them shone the same circle symbol Timo had seen before, a mark pointing to a distant place among the stars. Timo stood in silence, his chest full of awe. The serpent was telling him that humanity was meant for more than Earth. The gift left behind was not only knowledge but also a promise. One day people would carry the light of their world into the heavens and join others beyond. The figure of the serpent swirled gracefully around the chamber. Its feathers shimmered like starlight, painting the walls with shifting patterns. Timo felt no fear. Instead, he felt honored to be in its presence, even if it was only a vision. He whispered softly, promising that he would keep the story safe, that he would share it with care. The serpent's voice grew softer, speaking of peace and unity. It said that the stars were not only places of mystery, but also paths of connection. Every world was like a feather, part of a greater wing, and humanity was destined to add its own feather to that wing. Slowly, the light began to fade. The serpent's form grew dim, its body dissolving into golden sparks that drifted across the chamber. Timo reached out a hand as if to catch them, but they vanished gently into the air. The golden panels returned to their softer glow. The stars on the ceiling faded and the chamber became quiet once more. Timo stood still for a long time, his thoughts racing. What he had seen was beyond anything he could have dreamed. It was not a simple tale carved in stone. It was a message across time, given by those who had trusted humanity with their wisdom. He took out his notebook and began to write quickly, filling pages with every detail he could remember, the shimmer of the feathers, the calm voice that spoke inside him, the words of hope for the future. His hand shook as he wrote, but his heart was steady. He knew the story was too important to be lost. When at last he closed the notebook, he placed his hand gently on the golden floor. He thanked the chamber for its gift. Then he rose and walked slowly back to the stairs. As he stepped into the daylight of the jungle, he carried not only his notes but also a new sense of purpose. The serpent had spoken and he had listened. Humanity was not meant to remain bound to earth. The stars were waiting, and the promise of the feathered visitor was now alive within him. Timo returned to the tomb at sunrise. Carrying his notebook and a small pack of supplies, each step down the stone stairs filled him with anticipation. He had already seen the glowing serpent, the maps of stars, and the vessel of light. Now he felt closer than ever to understanding the full message left by the sky traveler. As he entered the chamber, the golden panels greeted him with their soft glow. He moved carefully to the center and placed his hand on the hidden circle in the floor. The stone shifted under his touch and lines of light spread outward once more. The ceiling lit up with stars and the serpent shimmered among them. Then Timo noticed something he had not seen before. A small object lay in the center of the glowing circle, half buried in dust. It was made of gold, shaped like a feather, delicate but strong. He picked it up gently, feeling warmth spread through his fingers. The object seemed alive, almost humming with a quiet energy. Timo held it close to the golden panels. The moment he did, new images appeared. The panels glowed brighter, showing the serpent descending from the stars. The vessel, shaped like a feather, moved toward the golden object in his hand as if recognizing it. He realized that this was not just decoration. The golden feather was a key, left behind by the sky traveler for those who would be ready to find it. It was a piece of knowledge, a tool, and a symbol all at once. Timo felt its importance in his hands, knowing it was meant to guide humanity toward the stars. He placed the feather carefully on the center of the circle. Lines of light spread from it to the walls and ceiling. The star maps rearranged themselves, showing a clear path from Earth outward. The symbol he had seen before, the circle with lines, glowed at the end of the path. This was the destination, the place the sky traveler had marked long ago. Timo sat on the floor staring at the panels. He thought of the Mayans who had once stood here. They had received knowledge and recorded it for the future. They had hidden this key, knowing that one day someone would awaken it. Now he held it in his hands. He felt a responsibility, but also a sense of wonder and pride. He turned the feather over, examining its design. Tiny symbols were etched into its surface, faint but precise. They looked like instructions or a code, perhaps to guide those who would carry it forward. Timo traced them with his finger, feeling the connection to the people who had crafted it so long ago. The serpent shimmered above, as if watching him. Timo whispered softly, promising he would honor the gift and use it with care. The chamber was quiet, yet the golden panels seemed to pulse with approval. He understood now that this key was not just for him, but for all humanity. It was a bridge between Earth and the stars. He thought of the vessel shaped like a feather, floating through the sky in the images. The golden object in his hand seemed to respond to it, as if it were part of the same design. Timo realized that the key could unlock more than a story. It could unlock possibilities, ways for humans to reach beyond their home planet. Hours passed as he studied the feather and the panels. He sketched every detail in his notebook, making sure nothing would be forgotten. The maps, the serpent, the symbols on the feather, they were all part of a larger plan. Timo felt a connection to the past and the future at the same time. Finally, he stood and carefully placed the golden feather in his pack. He looked around the chamber one last time, thanking it for its gift. The serpent on the ceiling seemed to shimmer one final time before returning to its stillness. The panels glowed softly as if resting until the next visitor arrived. Timo climbed the stairs slowly, carrying not only the feather but also a deep sense of purpose. He knew that the key would guide humanity one day, but only if people were ready to listen. He imagined a future when humans would follow the paths shown by the serpent and the stars, carrying the light of their world to distant places. Outside, the jungle welcomed him with the fresh smell of leaves and earth. Birds called in the trees, their songs bright and clear. Timo looked up at the sky, feeling small yet connected to everything above. The stars seemed closer now, their paths clearer. The key of gold in his pack reminded him that humanity had a place among them. He whispered a promise to the sky traveler and to the Mayans who had protected this secret for centuries. He would share what he could, teach others what he had learned, and keep the key safe. The golden feather was more than a treasure. It was hope, knowledge, and a promise that humanity's journey had only just begun. With steady steps, Timo began his walk back through the forest. The tomb behind him glowed faintly in the distance as if it were sending him off with blessing. The golden feather in his pack felt warm, alive with possibility, and Timo knew that the story of the serpent was far from over. Humanity was ready to take the next step, and he would help guide the way. Timo walked through the jungle carrying the golden feather carefully in his pack. The forest was alive with morning light, the birds singing in harmony above the trees. Each step felt purposeful, as if the earth itself knew he held something extraordinary. The tomb of the feathered serpent was behind him, hidden yet glowing faintly beneath the canopy. He felt a deep respect for the ancient people who had built it and left a message across time. As he emerged onto a small clearing, Timo paused to study the golden object in his hand. The feather seemed to hum with quiet energy, a warmth that spread into his palm. It was small yet powerful. He realized that it was not just a key for doors or machines, but a key for the imagination of humanity. It carried the promise that humans were meant to explore, to learn, and to grow beyond their world. He thought about the vision of the serpent, the way it had glided among the stars and shared its knowledge. The images in the chamber had shown people lifting light into the sky and following paths that stretched across the cosmos. That vision had filled Timo with hope. He understood that the feathered visitor had trusted humans to reach for something greater. Timo found a quiet spot near a stream and set the feather gently on a flat rock. The light it gave off reflected in the water, shimmering like tiny stars. He took out his notebook and began to sketch the last details he had seen in the tomb. Every feather, every symbol, every line of the star map mattered. He wanted to make sure that none of it would be forgotten. As he worked, he imagined the Mayans who had once walked this jungle. They had observed the sky, counted the days, and recorded knowledge that went far beyond their time. They had created the tomb not as a grave, but as a guide. They had placed the golden panels, the maps, and the key to the future in a safe place, trusting that one day someone would understand. The golden feather seemed to respond to his thoughts. It glowed slightly brighter, as if encouraging him. Timo smiled softly. He knew that the feather was more than a tool. It was a symbol of hope, of the connection between the past and the future. It reminded him that humans had always dreamed of the stars and that one day they would reach them. Timo packed his notebook and the golden feather carefully and began the walk back to the village. The path through the jungle felt alive, the sunlight warming the earth and the air carrying the scent of leaves and flowers. He thought about how he would share his discovery. The knowledge he carried was too important to remain hidden, but he also knew it must be shared wisely. The gift of the feather was meant to inspire and guide, not to be rushed or misused. He reached the edge of the forest and looked back. The tomb remained hidden beneath the trees, its golden panels glowing faintly in the sunlight that filtered through the leaves. He felt a sense of peace knowing that it would continue to wait, protecting its secret until humans were ready to follow the path it had set. As he walked toward the village, Timo imagined the future. He imagined people building vessels that would carry them into space, guided by the knowledge left in the tomb. He imagined them looking up at the stars, knowing that they were not alone, that someone or something had once shared a gift with them from beyond the sky. Timo whispered a promise to the feathered serpent and the ancient people who had trusted humanity. He would honor their gift. He would tell the story, share the knowledge, and keep the key safe. The golden feather was no longer only a discovery. It was a responsibility, a bridge between the earth and the heavens. By the time he reached the village, the sun was high in the sky. Children played in the fields, Birds sang in the trees, and the world seemed ordinary and yet extraordinary. Timo held the feather close and smiled. Humanity had been given a chance to reach for the stars, to explore and learn, and he carried the first step of that journey. He placed the feather in a small box he had made, keeping it safe and protected. The tomb would remain in the jungle, waiting for the next person who was ready. And one day, humans would follow the paths shown by the stars, carrying the light of their world into the heavens. Timo looked up at the sky, feeling the weight of history and the promise of the future at the same time. The golden feather in his pack was a reminder that humans were not only children of Earth, but explorers of the universe. The story of the feathered serpent was now part of him, and he knew that one day it would become part of all of humanity. With a deep breath, he smiled and began to plan the next steps of his journey. The tomb had given him knowledge, hope, and a key. Now it was his turn to honor it. And somewhere above, beyond the clouds and stars, the feathered serpent seemed to watch, waiting patiently for the day when humans would rise and follow the path it had left behind. The story of the Mayan gold for the sky god had begun, and humanity's journey to the stars was only just starting.